Alright, getting straight into it. So first thing you're going to have to do is make a map. For this game, I took the map made in the last video and zoomed in on a northern part of it called the Bleak Plains. And I basically do the same thing that I did previously. If you want to see the previous video, I'll add links up and down in the description and all around. Things to note with this video, first of all, it is chock full of AI art. That's not a brag. I just wanted to point out it's not actually mine. I just plugged some stuff into ChatGPT, so if you see something that looks like it belonged to another artist, give them the credit, not me. The music used in this video was created by Ivan Dutch, who aside from being an awesome composer, seems to be a pretty awesome dude. And just an FYI, the game of this has already been played. This is a very quick rundown of how that game went as I set up a villain for this world that I've created. Alright, let's go. Travel as far north as you can go, and you will eventually arrive at an orc-infested, frozen tundra. The Bleak Plains. Unknown to the tribes who make this place their home, these lands were once covered in a steaming rainforest, controlled by an ancient and advanced people, the ruins of which can still be found dotted across the landscape. The rulers of these city nations battled among themselves for supremacy, the first amongst them taking the title of Arch Sorcerer. Highly advanced, the species merged technology and magic to create machines of great devastation, and to create and manipulate the lesser races that would come to rule the world in future ages. As their internal conflicts continued, they tapped into the power of the lost Chaos Gods, and used their dark rituals to raise their deceased servants once again as warriors. This perversion of the Chaos Gods roused one of those slumbering beings to curse the entire race with a wasting decay. As their species wasted away, those that remained desperately sought to preserve their futures, entombing their adolescents and young in stasis pods to preserve them for the future. 10,000 years pass, and the jungle home of these ancients turned into a frozen glacier, destroying those city-states that remained. And stepping out of a pod emerges a youth. Little is known of what happened in those early days. What is known is that the wasting sickness immediately began its work. Because I drew a king. Yep, drew a king. First draw. That happened. The youth also discovered that the city was named Ulmai Foatu, using the Slaves to Darkness book. And he adopted the title used by his ancestors, the one the world would come to know him as, the Arch Sorcerer. Delving into the archives of his ancestors, the new Arch Sorcerer began to experiment with the necromantic arts, turning the desiccated bodies he found in the ruin into servants. And it was not long until he had his first encounters with the people that lived in this frozen land. Under persuasion, the travelers reveal the location of a nearby elven city, Shaloth Lossi Ariel, the Spear of Frozen Hearts. Tempted by the potential for a new source of information and a potential path to remove his affliction, the Arch Sorcerer travels to the Spear, and beholds a city of slender elven towers built upon the ruined ziggurats of his own people. Unable to enter the city without drawing suspicion, the sorcerer sent in servants who approached with bribes, and discerned that a cult, the Circle of the Word, containing artifacts and libraries. With the aid of his magical abilities, he managed to sneak into the cult and discover the location of a nearby ruin that might contain relevant information to his curse. The information did not come without cost, as he was beset by acolytes of the Circle, engaged in a magical battle with him, which he had to flee injured. Traveling to Abul Zei, the sorcerer encounters an old temple complex, the heart of which lay a strange device emitting a powerful, ominous aura. From this device, an entity interacted with the sorcerer, finally putting a name to the being that had cursed his people, Baalubel, the rotting serpent, corrupt and craving power, yet with a complete inability to harm the young. The entity agreed to assist the sorcerer to break his curse and combat Baalubel in exchange for its own freedom, for the creature was sealed in a location unknown to it. The sorcerer agreed on the condition that the entity aid his quest for immortality. The entity did this, letting the Arch Sorcerer know that his soul could be split into 7 gems that would safely contain the shattered remnants of his own soul. Excited and fueled with the new prospect of eternal life, the Arch Sorcerer knew there was one place to get the information that he required. He returned to the spear and engaged in combat with the Circle of the Word, The entity also passed the Arch Sorcerer the words of the first spell ever created, a powerful tool that could be used to defeat any enemy. Using the words of the first spell and his mass necromantic minions, the Arch Sorcerer smashed the Circle of the Word, claiming their resources for themselves. At the same time, while he was there, he encountered a strange human alchemist who seemed to have the ability to turn any other material into pure gold. This has obvious benefits for him, and as he was consolidating his power in the city and slowly using this now slaved human, the wealth of the sorcerer just grew immense, and his influence in the city became absolute, effectively becoming the patron of the whole city. Within the libraries, the Arch Sorcerer found references to an ancient tomb on an island west of the spear's location. Needing time to navigate the libraries of the Circle, the Arch Sorcerer settled in, researching ancient documents as his new servant furnished him with great wealth. During his studies, and using his new gold, bribes, and barter, the Arch Sorcerer was eventually approached by an elf, believing he could make a bargain to secure his own power, betraying his family and his friends, to rule the city under the guidance of the Arch Sorcerer, in exchange for curses that removed all barriers to his power. With the city in hand, and his past laid before him, the sorcerer made for the tomb of Eozthulcutl, which, despite being randomly generated, kind of works really well with this Aztec vibe that I've got going on. Sailing through the icy flows to the island, the sorcerer entered the tomb and beheld an image of a beauteous half-serpent reaching out its arms in a welcoming pose. Feeling a presence, the Arch-Sorcerer began a communion, feeling the entity he had negotiated with before. This being was called Ur-Ubel, and was the brother of Baal-Ubel. Ur-Ubel would assist the Arch-Sorcerer in his quest, but to grant him a portion of his own power, the sorcerer would have to bind his soul to this being. The sorcerer duly agreed, feeling his soul touch something greater, bound now to this being. Ur-Ubel revealed another secret to immortality, being that the soul could be split into pieces and fashioned into a machine to preserve the immortal soul within its own body. Having done this, Ur-Ubel instructed his new minion to bind more souls to his cause. With these instructions, the sorcerer returned to the spear to discover that a coup had been instigated in his absence. At his feet in the throne room lay his bound princeling, the murderer, kneeling over the corpse, and pleading with the Arch-Sorcerer to accept his fealty in place of his murdered leader. What an opportunity. The sorcerer agreed on condition that the elf and any servant following him would bind their souls to Ur-Ubel the same way that he himself had done. The elf agreed, and the Arch-Sorcerer could feel the smirking of some ancient entity. With his material power growing, and feeling the prod from his master in his mind, the sorcerer immediately began commands to research a machine that would fulfill the functions to preserve his soul as he had discovered. The sorcerer traveled into the foothills surrounding the spear, locating a tribe in the cold steppes. The Arch-Sorcerer negotiated with the shamans, trading spells, tools, and weapons they could use to fight their own enemies, in exchange for what they knew. The orc shamans knew that through sacrifice and blood magic, the soul of an immortal can be fed and kept from dissipating into the ether. They also allowed the sorcerer to engage in a scrying ritual, through which he saw two visions, the thread between them dependent on his work and research in the coming days. On one side, everything the sorcerer had ever dreamed of, mortality, wealth, and power. On the other, a slow decaying death at the hands of laughing, cruel gods. His course set, he returned to the spear, and while his elf servitors scurried around, completing the machine into which he would embed his own soul, the sorcerer studied on his new subjects, committing atrocities upon the elves. And at last, the Arch-Sorcerer finally has the last piece of the puzzle. His machine set up, the sacrifices laid out before him, the gems in place, he begins the ritual as laid out by Ur-Ubel, and undergoes a great apotheosis. But as he begins to feel his soul bind itself to the machine that he has sacrificed so much for, a mocking laughter appears in his mind as he feels his soul slowly drain away somewhere to the ether, and he realizes the deception of his patron, seeing before him all the ways in which he's been tricked, pledging his own soul in servitude, pledging an entire city's worth of souls in servitude, a city that will then go on and bind the orcs of the north to servitude. Not in his name, but in the name of Ur-Ubel. He has not achieved his apotheosis of immortality, and has instead become a demi-lich, his age many times that of a normal mortal, but his body continuing to decay. He sits now, millennia later, on his throne, fulfilling the designs of his great master, or secretly trying to find a way to plot against him, to plot his revenge, and plot his path to immortality. And this is where we leave off, with the being now known as the Arch Sorcerer, angry and betrayed, and at the head of this community of elves, utterly devoted and bound to the being that tricked him into becoming this desiccated form on a throne. What's going to happen next? I don't know. It'll be cool to see how it all plays out in gameplay, but I suspect the Lich is going to play a few other cards, probably against both his patron and his old enemy. Urubel's going to be wanting to find ways to manipulate the world for whatever schemes he's got. And Barley Bell, who knows? He's just sitting in the background, waiting. So that's Lichdom. That is how the game that's how the game rolls. Yeah. Let's see how this goes. Bye bye.